Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. We were just having a few issues here with sound, and as you know, we've moved into this wonderful virtual world of technology and sharing things. And it's pretty funny because we've been doing this for LSVT Global for some time and never had problems. And now that we have all these different outlets and I had to learn Zoom and Teams and all these other things, sometimes issues happen. So again, thank you so much for your patience, and I really look forward to spending time with you. My name is Heather C. Yancey, and I am the physical therapist who will be teaching with you alongside of my colleague, Julia Wood. And Julia is an occupational therapist, and I've had the great fortune of working with Julia for several years. So welcome to this installation of LSVT Global's webinar series, and this is how occupational therapists and physical therapists can collaborate to successfully share LSVT BIG clients. And this is something that Julia and I feel very passionate about. We have shared a number of patients over the years, and we do realize that this can be a little nervous, a little nerve-wracking for therapists who aren't sure as to really how to go about this. So Julia and I want to calm your nerves and help you to feel really confident in what you're doing. So again, myself, I am Heather C. Yancey, and Julia Wood is my co-presenter. Just briefly, here are our biographies. You can take some time to read these over, but please know that Julia and I both have worked for LSVT Global for some time. We are both faculty members who train other therapists, and we work at a center called the Dan Aaron Parkinson's Rehab Center, which is in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, part of the University of Pennsylvania's Parkinson's Disease and Movement Disorder Center. So the majority of the patients that both Julia and I work with do have Parkinson's disease, and the other have an atypical Parkinsonism or another movement disorder. So we are quite well versed in using LSVT BIG and also in working with our speech language pathologist in working for her end with LSVT Loud. So we do need to disclose some information for you and let you know that all LSVT faculty do have both financial and non-financial relationships with the organization. And what that means is from a non-financial relationship, that means that we do have a preference for using LSVT BIG as a treatment technique. Concerning our financial relationships, both myself and Julia do receive lecture honorarium and serve as consultants for LSVT Global. I want to just briefly go over with you some of the webinar logistics that are here. Right now, everyone's microphones are muted just so we can have a nice quiet background for us as the presenters. We want to let you know that we will not be taking questions during the webinar, but we will entertain them at the end. And I will go over with you at the end, again, how to ask questions. Honestly, the easiest way to do it is simply go ahead and type your questions into the chat box, and you can do that at any time throughout the presentation. There are handouts that are available for this that you're able to click on through your GoToWebinar box there. There is a very short survey that we will be having at the end of this webinar. Please let us know how we're doing, how we met your needs, and if there are other topics and subjects you would love to learn about. It helps us to be able to provide that information to you. And then I'm going to briefly just talk to you about getting your CEUs. So if you want to self-report this CEU activity, we just want you to know that LSVT Global is, for this webinar, is not ASHA or state registered for CEUs for speech, PT, or OT, but you absolutely can use it to self-report this credit as a non-registered, non-pre-approved activity. What we need to do if you do want to report this, what we ask for that out to you with your name, the date, and duration of the webinar. So obviously people come from different states and perhaps even different countries, so know that those licensing requirements do differ, and you're going to need to check with your state agency. And again, please do attend the full interview. So what will Julia and I be talking about? What are we focusing on? What are the objectives? We really hope that at the conclusion of this webinar that you're really going to be able to understand the unique roles of both physical therapy and occupational therapy when you're evaluating and working with someone with Parkinson's. And we hope that you're going to have a much easier time with being able to translate the findings of both, whether you're a PT or OT, your evaluation findings into a really client-centered treatment plan so that you can help that patient to meet their individual goals. We also hope that you'll be able to apply the principles of interdisciplinary collaboration when you're working with a patient. And, you know, Julia and I like to say it really does take a village, and two heads are better than one. We all see things differently and have different experiences and specialties. So if you are able to partner up PT and OT, we really do highly recommend it. And we'll talk a little bit more about how do you make that work. So I am going to attempt my best at this poll. Sometimes the polls can be a little funny with me, so give me just a little moment here. We are going to set up polling question. We'd like to know who is joining us. So if it's a PT, PTA, a professional or student, same thing for OT and a CODA. If you're another healthcare professional, if you're actually a person with Parkinson's or a care partner, or if other. So let me see if I can go ahead and pull that poll up for you. Okay, so go ahead and take a few moments, log into that poll for me and let me know who you are. Great, I'll give you just a little bit more time. And Julia, it's looking like the OTs are in the lead here. This is fantastic. Usually the PTs are really the strong profession that's out there. We'd love to see a lovely 50-50 split one of these days. Okay, so it looks like right now we have 34% are in physical therapy, almost 60% are in OT. We have 5% who are other healthcare professionals, and we have 5% who are a person living with Parkinson's disease or someone who is a care partner. So great, that helps us to understand who you are and where you're coming from. So let's go ahead to poll number 2 here. Let me close that one out. Our next poll question is going to be, if you are PT or OT professional or student, are you already LSVT BIG certified? So let me go ahead and launch that one. And go ahead and take a moment to answer that for us. Fantastic, good, couple more slowly coming in. Excellent. So the majority of people, we have about 63% of you are already certified in LSVT BIG, and about 40% are not. So we hope that you who are not already certified will be really motivated and feel like you want to get certified after this webinar tonight. So thank you again for your time with that. Okay. So what is LSVT BIG, right? A lot of you know it because you're already certified, but for those who aren't certified, important to give you just a little bit of background. This is an evidence-based program that has really specifically been tested on people with Parkinson's disease. It can also, though, be used for individuals with other neurological conditions. It is a prescribed minimum dosage and a delivery method. And I think a lot of times that can make people nervous. They hear that it's a protocol and they think, oh, I don't want to be told what to do. I should have autonomy. I want to be able to make those choices for my patients. And I think the same things. What I want to tell you, though, is that although it is a prescribed minimum dosage and a method of delivery, the way that you treat every single patient is completely different from any other patient. The thing that is the same is that you provide that course of care for 4 consecutive days a week, meaning that that patient is going to get 16 sessions in the month in addition to their evaluations, and that those sessions are 60 minutes. And while the sessions have prescribed parts with exercise, parts with function, parts with gait, parts with ADLs, the way you deliver that to your patients is going to be intensive, and it's going to be, of course, large amplitude, big movements, but the things that you do with your patients are going to be based on that individual patient's goals. So behind what we're doing with any of the exercises, with any of the ADLs, with any of the mobility issues, that skill set is performed with really high effort, and our key focus is really on helping that patient to understand how to rescale amplitude and then to be calibrated and from a sensory standpoint, meaning that no longer do they have to have someone to tell them to stand up bigger, to have someone to tell them to take bigger steps. They don't need to be reminded of that so much. They don't need to look in a mirror to see that something's happening. They sense it and they feel that they're not giving enough effort and they're not giving enough amplitude, and they're able to self-correct that. And of course, everything, like I said, we do individualized training of really very patient-specific functional goals and needs. So it is absolutely tailored to what your patient's needs are. So let's talk about who can provide LSVT BIG. We can only provide LSVT BIG if you have passed the certification course. So that means a BIG certified physical therapist, and you can do that. If you don't have a PTA who works with you, that's okay. You can do it on your own. But if you are a PTA, you do need to have a PT who is certified. Both of you need to be certified to work with that patient. Same thing for the occupational therapist. You can certainly treat your patient without a CODA as long as you are certified, but that CODA does need to be certified with you also being certified. The other way that you do it is like we're going to talk about this evening, and that is the PT and OT each providing 2 sessions per week. And I can even tell you sometimes that changes. It may be that the OT provides 3 times a week and the PT provides 1. As long as that patient is getting a comprehensive program with both of you that entails 4 times a week for 4 weeks, that is considered LSVT BIG. So now let's find out a little bit about who you guys are with the members of the team. So we're going to do another polling where we're going to ask, are you currently part of an interdisciplinary OT and PT team? So let me go ahead and pull that up for you. And go ahead there. You can put in, oh, here we go. Good. I'm hoping that I see the interdisciplinary numbers higher. Excellent. Yep. Good. It looks like we have over 60% are PT and OTs working together, and about 40% are no. I hope those folks who don't have the ability to have the PT and OT, again, will be really motivated to help kind of make that part of their team. So thank you for sharing that. So let's look at what are these frequently asked questions that we get all of the time. You know, Julia and I teach all over for this program, and we teach new grads, we teach therapists who have been out there for 20 years. You know, people will say to us, well, why should PT and OT see the same client for LSVT BIG? Isn't it just the same thing each time? The answer is absolutely not, because we have individualized goals. I might be doing the same exercises on Monday and Julia is doing them again on Tuesday, but Julia may advance that patient. She might put them on a balance pad. She may add in flicks. She may do something to make it more challenging. Same thing for me. So absolutely, we're not doing the same thing because we have separate goals. The second one that we get all the time is this double billing when both OT and PT provide LSVT BIG? And the answer again is no, absolutely not. We are not seeing the patient on the same day. So I am having one treatment with the patient one day, Julia is having a treatment with them on the other day. Again, separate goals. This is one that Julia and I laugh about all the time. OTs can't do gait training. Shouldn't the PT just see them? And we always say, you know, well, if you think OTs just do ADLs, you know, and they're working on someone getting in and out of the shower, how did that person get to the shower? Did they walk to the shower? How did they walk to their bed? How did they walk to their kitchen? It's true that OTs cannot bill for gait training, but absolutely OTs do gait training. And the difference is that they would simply bill that under therapeutic activity. We also laugh at the next one. PTs can't work on handwriting. Shouldn't the OT just see them? There is no federal or state or local law that mandates that a therapist, only one can work on one thing. OTs don't just do the hands and PTs don't just do the legs. If it is a functional problem, then we all can work on it. Again, last one, should we both see the client on the same day for LSVT BIG? Sort of answered that before. No, we don't want to see the patient on the same day. We want to spread it out over the course of 4 days over the week. And this is going to make much more sense to you as we go through the additional slides. So, you know, why are Julia and I here kind of professing to you the importance of both PT and OT? Well, obviously we are 2 distinct specialty services, and we each comprehensively address that patient's needs. So, Julia is doing different outcome measurements than I am. She is educating in different ways than I am, and she is treating in different ways than I am. And that doesn't mean that we're treating in silos. It means that we're actually working together to educate each other as well as educating that client too. So there's a lot of communication that goes on between the treatments. What's really nice too is it helps to strengthen and enhance that sensory feedback that patient gets. They get many more opportunities because it's not just them saying, oh, well, Heather wants me to do this. Well, now it's Heather and Julia want me to do this. Now I have two people who are actively working with me on that. The other thing is that when you look at what the literature shows specifically when you're talking about people with Parkinson's disease, that those who receive interdisciplinary care actually show better improvement and better quality of life. So it truly is best practice. Now, for those of you that are out there and may work for companies who are a little leery of saying, they still think that there's a cap around, which of course there is no longer a therapy cap, but we do have thresholds. But remember, OT has its own pot of money, that magical pot of money for threshold. So again, if there's concerns with being able to maintain that threshold and challenges from your administration, if you have OT and PT, then you don't have to worry about that. Now, that being said, a lot of our folks who have LSVT Big are also going to have LSVT Loud. So that is for another discussion. We do have webinars on reimbursement and documentation, and you can absolutely, patients with Medicare can receive all three services. So I love this quote here about OT and PT collaboration. A collaborative approach between OT and PT is successful when both disciplines focus on complementary, different aspects in both the assessment and interventions, while being aware of the instructions and strategies used by each other. And this comes from just hands down one of the best Parkinson teams that are out there, Dr. Basbloom and his team over in the Netherlands. If you followed any of their research, they are very, very much into really pushing that collaboration of team members. So I do believe in that, and Julia does as well. So in an ideal world, an ideal scenario, that person with Parkinson's disease would get a prescription and both PT and OT would be consulted, okay? Unfortunately, it may look more like this. The person with Parkinson's disease receives PT for the evaluation or for balance changes, and then the person with Parkinson's receives OT evaluation for maybe the fine motor, but you know what? Can't we both determine what the needs are? Does it have to be one versus the other? I think it's beautiful that if the first evaluating therapist sees things, they can recommend what the other therapist should be called in for that. So there are also situations where you may have someone who is better served with just PT. If you have someone who truly their issues are really more high-level balance and gait, and they're really doing well with other things, perhaps it's just the PT. But you know what? Maybe you have somebody who is having more of the cognitive issues, who is having organizational management problems, organizing their medications, having way more of those fine motor issues, things that, again, I think Julia might be better served to help that patient with than it might be that we split them. In general, though, I can tell you the bulk of our patients that we do see, we like to split them. So I'm just going to briefly go over some of these outcome measurements, and then I'm going to let Julia take it the rest of the way, and then again, we'll come back and we'll talk again together about the questions and answers. So myself as a physical therapist, what am I going to do for my outcome measurements? Well, I'm going to look to what are my standardized things that are out there. And luckily we have the APTA has put together the PD Edge. And we also have the neuro section as the CPGs. So those recommendations that they have for neurospecific patients. So, we've highlighted on here some of the ones that we do most frequently within our clinic and that we recommend a lot of people will use that will get you really good information on looking at bradykinesia and hypokinesia. So the 10-meter walk test, the functional gait assessment, your 5-time sit to stand, and then your timed up and go. We do all three in our clinic, where we do the timed up and go with a motor task, and timed up and go with a cognitive task. For the OT suggested measures here, you can see there's many that are on here, but when we're looking at some of the things specifically with the amplitude of movement and function, you can always time a task. You know, patients have difficulty reaching and getting their wallets out of their pockets. They have difficulty with drying their hair. They have difficulty with being able to pull something in and out of a bag, being able to sit down and get into their email. You can absolutely time those things. If someone does a functional task with more effort and more amplitude of movement, they really should be able to do it in faster speed. You also have something there, the COPM, the Canadian Occupational Performance Measure, fine motor coordination measurement, the 9-hole peg test. And this is a great one here, and you have more questions about this. Often people do the handwriting, the systematic screening of handwriting difficulties. When Julia speaks with you, she'll talk a little bit more about that if you have questions. So before I switch over to Julia, this is the LSVT BIG Snapshot. What we're looking at here are, we start with our 7 maximal daily exercises. The first 2 are held, they're sustained, and the next 5 are back and forth. So we're doing lots of multi-directional repetitive movements. And then we look at our functional component tasks, one of which is always sit to stand, and then we pick 4 other. The beautiful thing if you're working with PT and OT is we have sit to stand, then I pick 2 with the help of the patient, and then Julia helps the patient to pick 2, and we talk to each other. So we have examples for you there, something like being able to pull the pants up, being able to step over something. And then your hierarchy. Those are the really kind of like almost long-term goal kind of things that you're working on with your patients. The patient identifies things that are very complex tasks with lots of things. So examples here again, dressing, meal preparation, and toileting. Then of course we have our walking. So we're going to vary where people walk inside, outside, up and down ramps, curbs, stairs, wherever they're going. And then again, we also have that carryover assignment that we assign them to do when they're not with us. So as I said before, communication is key, and this is perfect. After I talk about this, I'm going to hand this off to Julia. You know, I need to communicate my findings with her, and she needs to do the same thing with me. So we both evaluate the patient. It could be on 2 separate days. It could be that the evaluation came in just for PT, I saw the person, and then we're not able to get them in to see OT till the following week. That's okay. Doesn't have to be on the same day. But it's just that you two need to communicate. So I talked to Julia about her findings. Let's go ahead and set up those functional component tasks and the hierarchies. But again, your goals are specific to your discipline. So, you know, if I did the timed up and go ×3 and I set goals for that, Julia is not also going to set up goals for that as well. So it'll be much different in what we are setting our goals for. So let me go ahead here. I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to hand this over to Julia. So just give me one moment here. And Julia, you're on.
Can you hear me now? Okay, excellent. Okay, so when we talk about treatment, you know, often Heather and I get a lot of questions about essentially what is different and what's the same. Because obviously, part of the program of what we're doing is we're repeating and doing the same components with the exercises. I think I'm getting a little echo here. Are you getting that echo?
Sounds okay from my end. If someone wants to type into the chat box, are you guys doing okay? Does it sound okay?
Okay, you said echo.
Let me pull back a little.
Can you
Okay,
hear
try
me?
again.
Okay. Can you hear me via microphone only?
I'm only hearing you through the call in here on my phone.
Then, oh, he said perfect. That sounds better. Okay. So I think they're hearing my microphone, but I think you don't hear my microphone, Heather. We've had that happen before.
I told you, sound trouble, sound trouble.
Excellent. So I don't know if you want to mute it to prevent the echo. Okay. Anyway, here we go. You know, we've had all kinds of oddities with some of these webinars. So this is yet another. So basically, what do we share? What are PT and OT doing the same when we're looking at LSVT BIG? And so Of course, every single time they come in with us, and their homework every day is going to involve those 7 daily maximal exercises. So they're doing their seated exercises, they're standing, they're multi-directional. That's the same no matter what. But just like Heather said, a lot of times we might add a spin to it, right? She might work more on balance, I might work more on flicks or cognitive challenges, but either way, they're still doing their exercises. They're also going to have those same 5 functional component tasks every time they come in. That does not change. Once again, do we add a little secret sauce or flair based on our discipline? For sure. And then the hierarchy task, we may share 1 to 3 of those, and that's fine. So once again, we're doing the same thing, but maybe we're working on it a little bit. Oh, looks like we're getting the echo again.
All right,
I'm
Julia,
not sure.
let me pause here for a moment.
Okay. Sorry.
Go ahead and try now.
Okay. How is that? Better. Okay. Thank you guys for communicating with us, because we, of course, on this end can't hear it. So thank you. Excellent. Okay. So maybe you're sharing all of your hierarchies, right? But you're adding your own little flair to it. But also you could have different hierarchy tasks. So sometimes, and you'll see that I think a little bit in the example that we give tonight, the case example, where Heather might pick one more kind of quote PT, goal that she's working on for a hierarchy, maybe community mobility or things really involving a lot of gait or issues that way. And then maybe I have one that's more ADL based, and that's okay. Of course, we're going to use different outcome measurements that are more specific to our disciplines. Our plans of care are really going to be based around how we approach, the aspects of function. And then we're still, we're treating maybe a different diagnosis. So maybe Heather's really looking more at balance issues or, gait deficits, and maybe I'm looking more at cognition and fine motor deficits. And then the functional amplitude, that focus of the goals, are going to be related to each discipline. So she might be working with that more on arm swing, in gait, maybe I'm working at it more on really pushing the arm into the sleeve of a coat. So there's things that we're going to do the same, there's things that we're going to do differently. And that's really the beauty of it, because then they get that reinforcement, just like Heather mentioned, of that sensory feedback and integration, but then also that different spin that each of our disciplines, it's like having 2 different lenses on the same thing. So it's a beautiful thing. All right, next slide. So just like Heather said, communication's key. And, this is going to be dependent on your side of how you communicate. Sometimes we email each other. Sometimes we're across the room from each other. We've had funny times where I Skyped her from across the room, whatever you got to do. But you want to communicate. And sometimes it's just in passing, like, hey, what'd you do to upgrade, the challenges to the exercises? Because you're looking more at adding more reps or hold times, the percentage of your different cues, be it tactile or verbal. How much assistance have you been giving? Maybe they were using a chair and you see that, hey, they can do them without holding on to that unilateral assist. How many losses of balance did they have? How did they correct those? Did you have to give a little contact guard? Were they able to self-correct? Then changes in that challenge level, both their, dual task, maybe motor or cognitive task, so important, and how much they're able to self-correct. So these are things that we want to put in our documentation to really support what we're doing, and also communicate with one another so we know how to keep that challenge going. With the big walking, you can really describe the different biomechanics of it from your different discipline, whatever you might be looking at. The distance of how far they walk, looking at the speed or the time it takes them, so you get that concept of efficiency. The level of assistance, if they've needed a walker or maybe, a little bit of contact guard. And then once again, we're always looking for that level of calibration. So how much are they able to self-correct? So we want to document that in our notes. That really shows progress, and also communicate that with one another so we know how to continue to progress the patient. Okay. So can we say it enough? This is really the key to the kingdom, is communicating effectively and documenting that as well, because we get questions all the time about, is this covered by insurance? Is this reimbursed? Your documentation's really key. So in those hierarchies, what subtask were you doing? The other clinician's going to need to know this, so they know if you're sharing that, how to work them forward. And then also you really can see that progression in the notes as well. What level of physical assistance, what level of cueing, did they lose balance again? Were they corrected? What were the challenges that you were providing? Also that self-correction again. So looking at those same components throughout all the elements of the program. Always communicating their progress toward goals. How are they doing? How are their carryover assignments going? Are they getting that feedback from others? And then even their patient reported outcomes, or improvements out of the clinic. Like the other day, my friend said I, looked so, I was moving so much better, or looked so much younger, or whatever they said. That stuff can really give some positive reinforcement. So we're going to give an example now of a case that Heather and I actually had the joy of working with. And I have to say that some of these videos were when I was watching the slides and getting ready to do them tonight, I realized that when I presented the last time before we all got locked down in quarantine, this was one thing that just kind of brought a tear to my eye, because this was such a fantastic individual to get to work with, and to get to work with Heather on it. We even had some great students at the time that contributed so well to the treatment of this individual. So here we go. So this gentleman was young onset Parkinson's. He's only 45 years old. He had been diagnosed a couple of years ago, and he was not currently taking medications. And he really had a lot of I would say miseducation of the medications, and kind of fear of them from, being on social media blogs. And I even think that the doctor he was seeing at the time was not a movement disorder specialist before he came to us. And so he was really, I would say, misinformed is the best way about meds. He lived alone. And so, that wasn't maybe a challenge now, but it was something he was kind of thinking about. And he was working at a home improvement store to support himself while he was trying to go to college as well to move forward. And so he had a very close friend that we're not really sure the relationship and, who questions these things, but a very lovely lady friend who was very supportive and very worried. And he brought her into the mix and wanted us to communicate with her. Some of his hobbies, he was an avid photographer, did a beautiful job, really took some great photographs, and also loved playing the guitar. So really neat guy. So when Heather did her evaluation, she wanted to see him do the 5 times sit to stand. She also wanted to see his timed up and go ×3. So with the motor dual task, typically of holding a cup of water, or cognitive dual task of naming animals, or doing something to challenge them that way. She also did an FGA and a gait analysis. She looked at the 10-meter walk test. And one thing that she was really interested in too, because he had a lot of rigidity and stiffness in his upper extremity, which you'll see in some of the videos, getting his guitar out of the case, being able to put the strap essentially over his shoulder, and then being able to play the guitar. So for my evaluation, because he was complaining of a lot of issues with his fine motor coordination around writing and doing different tasks with his educational activities, also even some of his work activities, and he was really reporting kind of, I'd say, a blanket, effect almost of issues with fine motor. And also, he was reporting a lot of fatigue, which is very, very common, even early on for people with Parkinson's. So often when we consider the non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease, this is the most frequently reported and of frequent concern. So his fatigue really bothered him. It was impacting his ability to participate in his paid work task. He felt like it was impacting how long he could study and really attend when he was doing his schoolwork. And so I wanted to take a big look at his fatigue. I also did a COPM, or a Canadian Occupational Performance Measure, and he selected some categories out of that he wanted to focus on. I did a timed buttoning because he had 3 shirt buttons a lot of times on a type of like a Henley type shirt that he would wear, that he felt he was too slow, and sometimes it was really awkward. And then for his handwriting with school, for taking notes and things like that, I did a SOS2 assessment of his handwriting. So his functional component task, of course, the first one we don't have to think about. It's always sit to stand, no matter who, no matter what. But for this gentleman, because he was, pretty high functioning and newly diagnosed, we added a lot of cognitive and motor dual tasks that we thought he might encounter, like holding his backpack or bag when he would go to do his sit to stand. Also, maybe talking to someone and having a conversation, sliding out of a booth, because there were some booths in the cafeteria on the campus of the school that he went to. So really looking at what were those real world challenges and how could Heather and I work those into his program. Something he complained about a lot was retrieving his wallet from his back pocket, and that would slow him down a lot in different things he had to do when he was, at the grocery store and a checkout line. He was having trouble with those shirt buttons that we mentioned. His reaching and grasping, and this was for his work where he was stocking shelves and having to be able to grasp an item and reach and place it on the shelf. And then also crossing his leg for reaching his feet when he would go to put socks and shoes on, especially for tying shoes. So this is an example here, a video example that I'll have Heather show in just a second, where we're really looking at how to train and practice that reaching and grasping as a functional component task for his stocking shelves. So you could see where we worked a lot. That left hand for him, especially, was so rigid. Sometimes it was almost, it looked stuck. And so a lot of the work that we did on cueing that, I'm not sure if you could hear, and some of it, of course, was done in multiple repetitions of sessions, was really on opening that hand in a big way and grasping before he would go to move it. And so it looked pretty good here, but I remember how much more awkward it was in some of the earlier sessions as well. So these are examples here of his hierarchy tasks. So those are those more complex tasks, right? So these are, like Heather mentioned, these might be long-term goals or things that involve more steps and complexity. So one thing that he was really passionate about was playing his guitar. And so he had trouble getting the guitar out of the case because there was like a zipper, and it was really, moving that and kind of aligning things about the top and the base of the case and being able to open it. Also putting the strap over his shoulder, and then the movements of his fingers to actually play and manipulate the strings of the guitar. He was having some difficulty carrying boxes at work to place them on a higher shelf. And this was something he just felt, I think it was kind of an early manifestation of what we see often, where people start to carry something with their hands and it's almost like they forget they have feet. He became very unconfident when he was walking, and you could really see a change in his gait when he would try to carry a box. There were also some other work tasks that he was dealing with, like reaching down to a box, carrying the box and then putting that up on the shelf. and then taking notes in his educational activities. So when he would go to school, he needed to be able to copy from the board or the screen and write and turn pages in the book, which he was reporting a lot of trouble with. So here you can see an example of a video where we use like a stretch strap, right? We get really creative. Heather always says I can make anything out of a TheraBand. I can make a bra, I can make a shirt, I can do just about anything with TheraBand. But I thought this was a great use of a stretch strap for really working like he's holding and manipulating a guitar. I'll let Heather play that. So you could see really clearly for him how difficult that action is of abducting his fingers and really extending at the MCP was when he was trying to open that hand to play guitar. So some carryover assignment examples that we gave, and remember carryover assignments are those functional tasks that we give someone at the end of every day, right? So they go to leave the session and we say, what are you up to today? What are you going to get into? Maybe they're going to the grocery store to see a friend. And then we try to link in something that we've been working on driving that amplitude throughout that task. So some examples of things we did with him, we're trying to talk more with his hands because he tended to hold his arms and hands really stiffly and not move them. Leaving a short note for his mother because he wanted to work on his handwriting, and his mom lived close by. He would go to visit. We encouraged him to walk big to keep up with his coworkers and also seeing if they would notice that he was walking a little bit faster. Opening doors on campus for other people instead of letting them open a door for him. And we encouraged him to use his left hand, which was his non-dominant hand. But that's often what we see with people early on. If it's their non-dominant side, that is their affected side, it's almost like a learned non-use. They'll start not doing anything with that hand because they really don't have to, and they can avoid it. Tuning his guitar with his friends, and then even getting his backpack from the front seat and then standing up from the car. So these were some things we worked on how he could drive more amplitude through those things. So these were some goals that I set as his OT. I really wanted to look at a large amplitude strategy for those shirt buttons, and what he wanted from his improvement in that was to decrease his time, and he wanted to be more efficient in it. And he actually way surpassed this goal. I set it for 5 or more seconds, and I think he ended up improving by 15, 20 seconds or more. It was crazy how much improvement he made. Then also looking at his handwriting. So I used the SOS test to really measure his legibility in his handwriting. Typically with Parkinson's, we don't look at timing for handwriting because in order for them to improve the performance of their legibility and the size and really make the writing more clear, they have to take more time. So often that's not a good goal to set. Looking at PT, she looked at his gait speed, but while he was carrying his backpack, so he's walking across campus, really being able to maintain that big walk so that he'd be more safe and efficient and really prevent falls. And then also using his larger amplitude movements to demonstrate that safe and efficient bending when he was doing those work tasks of bending and lifting boxes. Also preventing injury, such a big thing. So some points here to remember. The evaluation has to be performed by LSVT BIG certified therapists before LSVT BIG treatment can be started. So you have to be certified in order to evaluate and recommend the treatment. Of course, PTs cannot supervise CODAs and vice versa. As an OT, I don't supervise PTAs. So that's one place we have to really stay in our lane. A shared approach, though, really helps to enhance calibration. So this is where sometimes staying in our lane, we can kind of merge our lanes a bit so that the person with Parkinson's gets the same messages, really gets that reinforcement from two different therapists. Because we know with that sensory issue, sometimes they don't perceive it. So maybe they think that, I'm just really wacky or Heather's really wacky. But then sometimes they do think both of us are just wacky. So we might need to assess also for the need for LSVT loud if you're noticing some issues with hypophonia. Maybe they they cough when they're drinking water. We want to get them into our speech colleagues. Sometimes there might be a delay in the start of treatment until you're able to coordinate schedules. That's okay. You have to develop some mode of communication. So it can be, tin can on a string or, paper airplanes, but you really want to email, leave notes, communicate somehow so that you can let them know what's going on with the plan of care. So in summary, I know Heather and I really strongly believe in this. The collaborative model of PT and OT helps so much to provide such a comprehensive, when you think of all of the motor and non-motor symptoms involved in Parkinson's, it really takes teamwork to make the dream work in order to make that patient-centered approach meet all of the complexity of the needs that most of these clients are going to show. So, when we do those maximal daily exercises, the functional component tasks, those simple unit tasks, buttoning a button, putting an arm in a sleeve, and even the big walking, we're going to share those. So both disciplines are always doing those. And then the hierarchies, we can share them if we want to, and a lot of times, like with the gentleman you saw tonight, we did share a lot of those, but you can also then, choose ones more unique to your discipline. The approach, the outcomes, and the goals are always going to really reflect the unique aspect of your discipline. So another thing to point out here, you can join us later this month to improve fine motor skills. So if you're really looking at how to use BIG to make all those fine motor tasks like typing and buttoning and handwriting better, refer your clients here if you can. This is a public webinar from 2 to 3 on Wednesday, April 21st. We'll be getting a little deeper into that topic.
Great. Thank you so much, Julia. This was so helpful. Always love working with you and teaching with you. So we want to thank you guys for your time. We are going to, looks like we have about 10 minutes to do some question and answer. So that will be great. Julia, it looks like the questions are only coming up in your chat box. So if you want to direct some of those questions at me, I will be happy to take them. Once again, best way for you guys to ask those questions is simply write them in the chat box. If we do not get to your question tonight, we run out of time, or you think of something after we've already logged off, don't worry about it. You can always send that question to info@lsvtglobal.com. We always have a specialist who is available. It's generally Jenny Tucito, who you see as our model on your pictures and in a lot of the videos. She will reach out to you. Please do give her about 3 to 5 days, though, to answer back. And don't forget, we will have a survey again at the end of this. So, Julia, let me know. What do you see in that chat box there? Any juicy questions?
I'm having a really hard time looking at it. Let me see. It's like I just have this tiny little window and it won't let me expand it. And all I'm seeing so far is about, the sound quality. I think I'm missing
No.
something.
Yeah,
They
my
were talking.
chat box. Yeah, I don't see
Oh, here we go. Hold
anything
on.
in my, you
Oh,
found it?
I think so. Hold on. Let me see if I can
Okay.
move the little arrow. It's like I literally can see like one line of text at a time. So here we go.
Exactly.
I'm gonna sound like I'm reading really slowly. Okay, so they said any advisement for how to implement LSVT in home care when management wants us to decrease frequency of visits. Um,
Ah. So since neither Julia and I work in home care, we don't want to give you information that might be incorrect, but I will let you know that we have an outstanding faculty member who is also an occupational therapist who deals in this wonderfully. So what I would ask for this person who asked this question, if you wouldn't mind shooting it to the info at LSVT Global, let them know you attended this webinar and you specifically wanted to talk to the home care specialist therapist, and she would be happy to reach back out to you. But this is a question that comes up time and time again. She'll be able to help you.
for sure. That's the only question I see, but I'm wondering if I'm missing something. Let me
Wow,
see,
we
I'm
must
making
have done a
sure.
great job then.
I know it was just clear as mud. Anybody else have any questions for us?
You can also share with us, we'd love to hear if you're already doing the PT-OT split. How's it going for you in your clinic? And for those of you who don't work with a PT or an OT who need to get certified, is this something that you think will be happening in your clinic now that you've heard this webinar? You know, we'd love to hear some great stories and ideas and thoughts from you guys.
Once again, not sure if it's just crickets or if it's not showing up. Oh, there we go. Here we go. I just got one. Look at me. I get so excited. I'm like, yay, it's a
Yay, thank
question.
you.
I know it's like one line of text at a time, but I can do it. Here we go. How about when trying to determine if a patient is ready for LSVT big or not? How do you communicate with physicians when this is the case? I would like, okay. Oh, I think this is a separate question. Okay, so go ahead with that one.
Okay, so communicating with the physician. So one thing you always have to remember is you do not need a script that specifically says LSVT big. You know, LSVT bag is just another tool in your toolbox of treatments. You know, you can choose whatever you like for that patient, but if you do your assessment of your patient and you find that they are really suffering from problems with their functional mobility and ADLs due to that bradykinesia and hypokinesia, if they're really struggling that they're not even realizing how slow and how small that they're moving, and then you do your evaluation and you try to stimulate them to see if you can make them do things bigger and then therefore better, and you think that they are a great candidate for that, you're allowed to go with that. You know, the prescriptions don't mandate how much you have to do. It just is your open door to get in with a patient. Hey, you're allowed to do this evaluation. You're able to choose that. You know, we're very fortunate that we work in a movement disorder center, so we've got great relationships. Our docs are on site with us. They understand that the choice is up to us. You know, we would encourage you, you know, send an email. You always have to send your plan of care to those physicians also to get those certified for that period of the 90 days with your patient. So make sure you write about that on your plan of care. And again, it's really up to you to determine what the patient needs. I always say, you know, the doctor, you know, thought enough of my skills as a therapist to write the prescription to say, you know, hey, Heather, take this patient, do what you can with it. If you feel like you need more backing from the physician because you do have a challenge with the insurance company, then you can always communicate with the doctor to help you write a letter of medical necessity. It'll be your role too to help that patient kind of fight for that extension of services. So, you know, if you have more specific questions or need examples on that, again, send us an email. We'd be happy to share more of that with you.
Excellent. And then I've got another question here. I would like to get an OT in our clinic certified and work together for sure. I noticed the Berg is not one of the recommended measures for PTs to use. Is it ever used?
Oh, yeah. So it actually is, the Berg is one of the recommended measures for, in general, for patients with neurological conditions. The concern when you're working with someone with Parkinson's disease, if they are newly diagnosed or they are someone who is young onset, the Berg will have a ceiling effect and you really won't capture any of the difficulties that the patient is truly having. So if you're lucky enough to get someone who's newly diagnosed, which we hope is the case for most of our patients, so newly diagnosed and young onset, Berg is not going to be the one that you use. But absolutely, if you get someone who is moving into, you know, stage 3, stage 4, and it's having much more difficulty, the Berg is absolutely appropriate to use. And again, you know, those outcome measurements, they can be used by PT and OT. No one owns that one. There are some, I know, Julia, for OT, you do have to pay for access for some of them, is my understanding, but a lot of them are free for use for PT.
Yeah, they hit our pocketbooks.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really good point, though. And I think, too, you guys, we had that slide about the PD Edge task force. And the nice thing about when you look up that website is they really lay out which assessments are better for which hone and yaw stages. So it can kind of help you guide that a little bit, too. Okay, we got another question. I love it. Oh, hold on. Here we go. I'm an OT and currently working in a mobile team with PTs. Got some good ideas for collaboration from your case study. Definitely agree with communication and documentation being key. Um, yep, and she said we'll work on it. Very cute. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Excellent.
you. Good, good,
And
good. Yeah,
it can
keep
be
it
work in
going.
progress trying to keep that communication going, even under best circumstances. So then we have a question here from Kurt. How does Medicare reimburse when the visits are so frequent?
Oh,
Do
yeah,
they
that's a
question
great
that?
question. It doesn't matter. No, they don't question that. The truth of the matter is, I wish that Medicare would make things very black and white and say exactly what we have to do. But it feels like sometimes it's more gray. But if you really dive into what they tell you, they kind of leave it open for therapists. They give you really good guidelines about, hey, it's got to be functional. Hey, they have to have a need. Hey there, they've got to have goals. It's got to be skilled. So it's got to be something that a PT or an OT can do. It can't be something that, a family member could do or a personal trainer can do. So I always say that what it comes down to simply is your documentation. You need to do a good enough job with your documentation to show that there is a true functional deficit and that deficit can only be corrected, through the specialty services and skilled intervention of a PT or an OT. I promise you, if you do that, it doesn't matter how many times you see that patient. If you can justify why that patient needs it, and either A, you improve the function and quality of life of that patient, or you prevent it from getting worse, you will do fine. We've been certified in LSVT BIG now, oh my God, since 2007. I can't even believe it. So it's been quite some time, and I can tell you that we've never had a denial. If we did have a denial, it was because of poor documentation. It wasn't because of the poor quality of care. So you always have to go back and make sure, am I documenting what the patient's struggling with? Am I documenting why I am the only person who can help them and why I'm making that change? So don't fear Medicare. Don't fear the Reaper. It's okay. You can use it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's so important, you guys. I mean, she made great points about, a lot of it comes down to showing your skilled care. When you can really show that, reimbursement will follow. And we know from neuroplasticity and motor learning that intensity and repetition of practice is so key. And so, you just have to tell them what you're doing.
You got it. Great. Well, I want to thank Julia so much for her time on this webinar. It's always great to teach with you. And like I said, if you guys have further questions, or we didn't get to your question, or we just couldn't read your question, feel free to shoot us out an email and absolutely someone will get back to you. Please do take a moment to complete that survey and hopefully we'll see you again at another webinar. So take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Heather.